What if I told you that the bad things that happen to you, the things that get you down, the things that get in the way of you achieving your goals and being the person that you want to be could disappear in an instant, and that you could make them disappear, or that you could blink and all of a sudden be where you wanted to be with your goals for fitness, health, life, love, even money? You may be surprised to hear that all of this is absolutely possible. I'll tell you how and why in this episode. Welcome back to the TD Fitness Podcast. This is the third episode in a three-part series on meeting your unbelievable fitness goals. And I've been explaining how you can do that through a story of my own, my experience in training for and completing a full Ironman race consisting of a 2.4-mile swim, a 112-mile bike ride, and a full marathon of 26.2 miles, all in under 17 hours. Impossible? I thought so too, until I did it. And one of the things that the experience overall helped me, or helped to drive home for me, is that when you start with the right mindset and you put certain disciplines into practice and maintain the right perspective, you can accomplish things that you never thought possible. And for me, in addition to mindset, discipline, and perspective, I stay grounded in faith, which shapes my attitude and my approach to all of those things. So 2 episodes ago, in episode number 128, we talked about the mindset for reaching your dream goal, no matter your fitness level. In last week's episode, number 129, the topic was how to reach the fitness goals you never thought possible. And now, in this episode, we'll wrap up with the key piece that we often overlook, and that's our perspective. That's the thing that can make the bad things that happen to you, the things that get you down, the things that get in the way of you achieving your goals and being the person that you want to be, disappear in an instant. Perspective can put you where you want to be with your goals overnight in life, love, money, health, fitness, as we'll talk about in this episode. So your successes start with mindset. It's achieved through discipline and maintaining a healthy perspective. So let's dive in. Do you know the day that I became an Ironman? The race was on October 17th, 2015. That's when I crossed the finish line. That's when they placed the medal around my neck. That's when we took photos at the finish line. That's when the race results were finalized and became official. And that's when I felt that I had accomplished my goal. But that's not the day that I became an Ironman. The day that I became an Ironman is that day in 2014, almost a year earlier, when I decided to start this journey. That was also the moment when I had the most control of what could or would happen. I had made the decision to train, to prioritize my time differently for the next 10 to 12 months, to be someone I wanted to be but had never been before. Before that moment, that is, because in that moment that I decided to be an Ironman, that's when I became an Ironman. Just like the moment you decide to be a runner, you become a runner. The moment you decide to walk a mile, you become a mile walker. The moment you decide to quit smoking, you're not a smoker anymore. And you remain that person until you decide not to be that person anymore. This is what I mean when I talk about perspective. You see, there are things in this life and on our journey that we can control. We can control who we tell ourselves we are. And then there are things that we will never be able to control. We can't control who others think or say we are. So who will you choose to believe? Will you believe yourself, the person who has the most control over who you are, or will you believe in others who have no control over the person that you are? I choose to focus on the things that I can control. Focusing on anything else just causes stress that you can't do anything about. You control what you think about yourself and how you respond to the things that are going on around you. I knew going into this that things would pop up to prevent me from accomplishing my training on certain days, that injuries were likely to occur, that I could get hurt, that I could fail to complete the race even. But because I couldn't control any of that, I chose not to focus on it. Instead, I focused on staying as consistent as I could given life's circumstances. I focused on getting a little bit better or going a little bit farther with each training session. So my question for you is this: as you're working toward your goal, what do you focus on? When you decided who you want to be or who you see yourself as, what do you focus on? Do you focus on the things that you can actually affect, or on the things that you have no control over? Focus on those things that you can control. Now, I know one of the things that prevents us from doing that is the measurements of success or achievement that we tend to use. I mean, let's be honest. I can consider myself an Ironman all I want, but if I've never done one, it's really my own false perception of who I am, right? Well, this is why understanding what your ultimate goal is important. Whether you're training for a marathon or a distance race, or whether you just want to go from a sedentary lifestyle to more movement a couple of times a week, each of those are really just incremental goals on the road to your ultimate goal, which is perhaps to live longer or to feel better or to live healthier. And once you understand that, then it's easier to talk in terms of what true measures of success are, or at least what they should be. Is my measurement of success my race time, or is it the fact that I completed the race? Is it the fact that I completed the race, or is it that I was consistent with exercise throughout all of my training? Is it that I was consistent with exercise over that 10-month period, or is it that now I've become, or I've overcome a mental block that would allow me to be consistent for the rest of my life? You see, we tell ourselves that we're training for the race, whatever your race may be, but my goal is to remind us all that it's not really about the race. I'll come back to that in a bit. So how we define success has an impact on our motivation, on growth, and our desire to continue. That's why I often cringe when I hear people putting so much of a priority on, for example, what the number on the scale says. First, that's something that you can't control. Okay, we just talked about that. Second, it's not about the number. It's about what you do to make the numbers change. And third, that number is someone else's mechanism for measuring you. So why not use your own? Why not use the snugness or the looseness of your favorite pair of pants? You know, this is one of the reasons why I'm a proponent of tracking and measuring the actions that we take toward our goal, not the outcomes of the goals themselves. Remember, the thing that we're focused on here is personal growth. Being better today than you were yesterday, living healthier. And none of those things involve comparisons to other people. So it's okay to compete against others as a form of motivation to make yourself better, but never forget that it's about you, not them. If everyone got worse and you were the winner of, you know, that contingent of everyone doing more poorly or worse than they had before, you're still at a worse off state than you were. The goal is to be better yourself. The way to get better, as we said in episode number 29, is to take consistent action. And these are the things that you should measure. It's something you can control, and you can see consistency or improvement over time, because again, you have control over that. You have control over the amount of effort and the amount of actions, the number of actions that you take toward your goal. So the next time someone asks you, hey, how did your race go? Expecting you to rattle off a finisher time, perhaps you can tell them, well, it was great. It's the first time I've trained consistently for 3 months straight. All right? What does success look like to you? What should it look like? Are you better off than you were before? Are you better postured? Are you better positioned? Better is the operative word here. Not a better time, but better habits, a better approach, a better outlook. Unless you're racing, don't worry about the time. Participating is just fine for helping you to live a better life, live longer, to live a more fulfilling life. And it comes with a lot less stress too. Now, I mentioned earlier that it's not about the race. And what I meant by that is that developing the skill of improving is more important than the actual improvement that you want to make. It's more important that you develop a habit of exercising than it is that you finish a race. It's more important that you learn how to incorporate healthier habits into your existing lifestyle than it is that you achieved your personal best. This comes back to the fundamental part of perspective, that right here, right now, society overlooks all too often. That is the opportunity to look at things through a long-term lens. When we can measure performance with the bigger long-term picture in mind and understand that it's just as much about learning the process as it is about achieving a short-term goal, then we set ourselves up for continued success. Instant results are possible, but they only last for an instant. We're working toward long-term lifestyle change, not short-term solutions here. Okay, I want to help you learn through your process. That's the point. James Clear has a good quote. He's quoted as saying, "Improvements are only temporary until they become part of who you are. The goal is not to read a book. The goal is to become a reader. The goal is not to run a marathon. The goal is to become a runner. The goal is not to learn an instrument. The goal is to become a musician. Focus on the identity you want to build." Great quote by James Clear. And another quote by Mike Dooley: "The obsession with instant gratification blinds us from our long-term potential." Man, I don't think it could be more true than it ever was today. Long-term thinking will bring much of what you do into perspective. It will highlight things as important that you never thought were important before. And it'll minimize things that you once thought is important as you realize that they're not as important as they once were in the grand scheme of things. So the final piece that I'd like to cover in this episode is the inevitable setback or 2 or 10. And remember that we're talking about perspective here, so you can probably guess where this is going. Setbacks can turn out to be roadblocks in our lives if we view them a certain way. Or they can be speed bumps if viewed differently. When I showed up for the Ironman in early October of 2015, many of us had checked in for the race a couple of days prior. I'd driven from 3 states away. Others had flown in from different countries, from all over the world. People had shipped their bikes there. We had all worked our training plans to taper workouts in those final weeks in an effort to be at peak readiness come race day. What we didn't anticipate, however, what we couldn't anticipate was a hurricane that was working its way up the East Coast that would cause the race director to postpone the race. At the time, we thought it was indefinite. We thought it was a cancellation. So imagine our disappointment. I mean, I remember thinking, if I don't do this now, I will never do it. I can't sacrifice this much again for this long. I remember feeling like it was all for nothing. Well, needless to say, it was a long drive back through those 3 states for me. I felt down. I felt defeated. And to be honest, I didn't necessarily have a healthy perspective at all. Not one that caused me to think, well, at least you're healthier now. I mean, I was really disappointed. No, I wanted to compete. I wanted to cross the finish line. I wanted that medal, and I wanted that T-shirt. That's where my mind was at then. Well, a couple of days later, after the storm passed through, we got word that the race would indeed take place. It would just be postponed by 2 weeks. So that was a speed bump, not a roadblock. But even during the race, I had a flat tire. My energy was depleted, on more than one occasion. I was being passed by people twice my age. Darkness fell, like literally nighttime came. Many of the volunteers went home. They had been out there all day, and they just left the drinks and snacks at the nutrient stops on the table for us to take whenever we got there. It was a really lonely feeling towards the end of that race. The clock continued to count down. All of this happened throughout one race day, but I think it's certainly representative of the things that can happen throughout a lifetime. You get injured, you get laid off, you get a failing grade, you lose money on investments, your car is stolen, a family member falls ill. The things that have served to get me through tough times in my life and on that race day are my faith and my perspective. You decide how things will affect you. You decide whether they get to you. You decide how you will handle it. You decide how quickly you're going to bounce back. You decide because you can control those things. You decide because life's circumstances don't define you. You decide because it's not just about short-term grief. It's about long-term fulfillment, perspective. Having a healthy perspective allows you to practice patience. I was forced to be patient when the race was canceled and later postponed. I was forced to be patient while changing my flat tire on the course. I was forced to be patient through 140.6 miles of swimming, biking, and running. That'll teach you patience if you don't have it. Those things don't happen fast. Perspective. It's the third and final piece of the puzzle that will allow you to achieve the possible and the impossible. It starts with focusing on what you can control and then measuring the right things, not just measuring things for the sake of measuring. And finally, long-term thinking and patience throughout. That's how you maintain perspective. Before I wrap up here, just a quick reflection of hope for you all. In January of 2021, in the midst of COVID, I remember a message from Cross Point Church in Florida. The title of the sermon was "What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do." And the pastor offered that we should first believe and then do the next right thing and then wait. Believe, do the next right thing, and wait. And as I think about my journey, my hopes, my dreams, my aspirations, I can't help but recognize that this message to believe, to do the next right thing, and to wait have played an instrumental part in so many instances of my life. My mindset is grounded in belief, my faith in God. And when I talk about practicing the disciplines needed for you to grow and reach your goal, it essentially means to do the next right thing. That's the action that we take. And then finally, waiting with the long view in mind and patience throughout. It was good advice from the pastor in 2021, and it's good advice for you to practice now. I'll end it there, but before I leave, I'd ask you to help others, help yourself, and if you're so inclined, help me. Help others by sharing this message with someone who can use it. Help yourself by downloading my single-page guide to gaining the perspective needed for success. You can find it at tdfitness.net/perspective or in the show notes for this episode at tdfitness.net/130. And then you can help me by leaving a comment, a review, a rating, or by sending me feedback. I use all of that to make what I provide for you even better. So before I go, the thing to remember this week, the thing that I want you to take with you this week is that perspective matters. That's it. Thank you. Have a blessed one. Coach T, out.